You used to fall in love like slipping on wet pavement. It doesn't start with a revelation of violently, without asking for it. A glance, a scent, a sentence, and something inside you would just lean forward, out of balance, out of breath. A gravitational shift. But lately, nothing. Not silence exactly. More like static. The sound your soul makes when it's trying to feel something but can't find the signal. You meet people. Some are beautiful. Some are kind. Some even love you. But still, nothing in you moves. No quake under your ribs. No fire behind the eyes. Just a quiet, polite emptiness. Like shaking hands with your own absence. And so you wonder, have I changed? Has the world changed? Am I broken? Or just wiser? Because the truth is hard to swallow, you don't fall in love anymore. You calculate. You assess. You scan for red flags, compatibility, trauma scores, and attachment styles. You run risk assessments on feelings you haven't even had yet. You preempt heartbreak before desire even starts. You build a checklist, not a pulse. And maybe that's maturity, or maybe it's fear. Not the obvious kind, but the slow, intellectual kind that disguises itself as standards and self-respect. But love never cared about being rational. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not a 5-year plan. It's a fever, a flood, a loss of balance. To fall in love is to lose your footing in the safest part of yourself. And the problem is, you've become very good at staying upright. You tell yourself you're just not in the mood, that it's the apps, the city, the generation, that people don't know how to love anymore. But if you're honest, brutally honest, you know it runs deeper. It's not just them, it's you. There's a lock somewhere inside, and you forgot where you hid the key. You see, falling in love isn't something you decide. It's something you allow, and somewhere along the way you stopped allowing. Because once long ago, you did fall, and it hurt. Maybe it shattered something you never rebuilt. Maybe it cracked your faith in your own instincts. Maybe it just taught you that love is not always a return on investment. So now, you've built something stronger, an emotional firewall, a beautifully curated self, an armor made of sharp jokes and cool detachment. You know how to flirt, how to seduce, how to look interested without opening your chest. But love doesn't happen to the curated self. It happens to the one you buried underneath it. So if you stop falling, it's not because love disappeared. It's because you've paved over the place in you where it used to land. But here's the thing, what's been buried isn't dead, only sleeping. And in this video, we're going to dig, not to resurrect some adolescent fantasy, but to ask, with sincerity and sharpness, why did you stop allowing yourself to fall? And more importantly, what might it take to fall again differently, but truly? It doesn't start with bitterness. It starts with silence. Not outside, inside. Like a radio frequency you used to tune into without effort. A soft hum in your chest when someone's eyes met yours for a little too long. A sudden stillness in a crowded room. A trembling in your hands when you wrote their name without meaning to. But now, there's no hum, no tremble, just white noise. You don't hear it anymore. The call, that irrational, magnetic signal that once pulled you toward people you barely knew, as if your soul recognized something your mind couldn't name yet. And it's not because the signal died. It's because you built walls so thick you stopped hearing what tries to pass through them. You've grown. You've read the signs. You've learned to anticipate the pain before it arrives. But here's the cost. You also stop responding to the irrational, to the sudden, to the unexplainable pull towards someone who doesn't fit the plan, but who lights something in you that hasn't burned in years. You used to be porous. Now you're laminated. Soren Kierkegaard once wrote that purity of heart is to will one thing. But before you willed ambition, self-protection, image, or control, you once willed love. You once opened the door without knowing what would come in, and that was a kind of purity too. But purity doesn't survive well in a culture of optimization. In a world where every vulnerability can be weaponized, you learn to run background checks on feelings before letting them through. And maybe that was necessary. Maybe that saved you, but it also cost you something. Because love, real, gut-wrenching, foolish, sacred love, never arrives with a warning label. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just walks in. And if you've spent years closing doors, filtering people through lists, numbing your responses just enough to play it cool, don't be surprised if love passes by your doorstep without knocking. You tell yourself it's just timing, that you're focused, that you're working on yourself. But maybe what you're really doing is hiding behind a project version of yourself that feels safe because the real you once bled. And yes, there was a moment. You loved once, truly. And maybe that person never even knew it. Maybe it was returned. Maybe it was crushed. But what matters isn't what they did. It's what you did afterward. You stopped listening, stopped leaning forward. You trained yourself to see every spark as a threat, every impulse as a glitch in the matrix. You became fluent in mistrust. You developed a sixth sense for your own disappointment before it had the chance to materialize. And in doing so, you became deaf to the signal, because the call of love isn't rational. It's not pre-approved. It doesn't wait for a green light from your trauma recovery plan. It comes when it comes. Chaotic, inconvenient, unasked for, and to hear it again, you'll have to unlearn some of the silence. That means noticing when you tense up for no reason, noticing when your eyes linger and you look away too quickly, noticing when a voice makes you feel something and you dismiss it as nothing. It means practicing listening not to words, but to pulses, to tiny fluctuations in your breathing when someone enters the room, to the flicker of longing before you smother it with logic. It means acknowledging the ache, the one that lives beneath the armor, because beneath all your strength, all your independence, all your knowing glances and clever emotional boundaries, there is still a part of you that wants to be touched, not just physically, but truly, to be seen and felt in the places you no longer name. That part of you hasn't died, it's only gone quiet, because it's waiting. For the moment you stop pretending you've outgrown love's foolishness. For the moment you remember that falling is supposed to be dangerous, and that hearing the call again might just mean daring to answer it, even if your voice shakes when you do. Falling in love? We say it like it's a soft thing, but to fall is to surrender control, to lose balance, to accept gravity without knowing where the ground is. And that, right there, is what you fear most. Not love, but falling. You've built your life on scaffolds of intention, choices, plans, ambitions. You move strategically now. You filter. You weigh. You calculate. And love? Love doesn't ask for your calculations. It interrupts them. It arrives uninvited, tears down your tidy equations, laughs at your list of non-negotiables, and dares you to trust a feeling over a forecast. But you've fallen before, haven't you? Once? You let go. You opened yourself like a window during a storm because something in their presence felt like spring. You believed, maybe not in them, but in the version of yourself that existed when you looked at them. And when it shattered, because it did, you didn't just lose the other person. You lost that version of yourself, too. The trusting one. The one who believed intimacy could be safe. And that version? You buried them. You told yourself you were healing, that you were learning. But you were also armoring. You replaced vulnerability with insight. You became fluent in all the signs: emotional unavailability, anxious attachment, love bombing. You saw the red flags from miles away, and with each new signal, you congratulated yourself for not falling again. But you also didn't rise. You stopped being moved. Albert Camus wrote about this kind of paralysis, not in love, but in life. His absurd man is the one who stares into the meaninglessness of the world and feels the weight of its silence. And in that silence, he has a choice to collapse or to rebel, to say yes to life anyway, to create meaning despite the void. Now imagine love as that same void, a place where nothing is guaranteed, no future, no clarity, no exit plan. And you, standing at its edge, you can do the math, you can count the risks, you can measure the odds of heartbreak, or you can rebel, not recklessly, not with the naivete of your past self, but with defiant presence. You see, love, real love, isn't the absence of fear. It's what you choose despite it. It's not trust without reason. It's the choice to trust while knowing all the reasons not to. It's walking towards someone knowing they could leave, change, hurt you, disappoint you, and still saying, "Here I am, and I will not disappear before you do." But this terrifies you, because part of you still believes that the fall was your failure, that loving without protection was a mistake, that if you had just seen it coming, you wouldn't have hurt so much. But maybe the pain wasn't proof of your foolishness. Maybe it was proof that you were truly alive, that you let something matter. And maybe what hurts even more now is not the memory of heartbreak, but the feeling of never having let yourself feel that deeply again. You keep telling yourself you just haven't met the right person, that your standards have evolved, that you're still open in theory. But you know, deep down you know, you are terrified of the fall, terrified of returning to that place in yourself where hope still breathes, where longing still aches, where you might, just might, have to risk your independence for something as fragile as connection. But here's the quiet truth. To fall is to be free. Because while control feels safe, it is also the cage that love cannot live inside. And so, you must ask yourself, is the life you're building without risk truly safer, or just smaller? Because the fall, if it ever comes again, won't feel like surrender. It will feel like remembering what your body already knows. That love was never meant to be walked into. It was meant to be fallen into. And you were built to survive the landing. When real love became too dangerous, you did something clever. You didn't kill the desire. You just redirected it. You turned it into a fantasy, not a sexual one, a spiritual one, a fantasy of purity, of perfect compatibility, of someone who understands you without words, touches you without needing instruction, someone who fits, not just your body, but your mind, your pace, your pain. You stopped chasing connection and started chasing alignment. But here's the danger of fantasy. It always feels safer than flesh, because flesh is messy. It sweats, it aches, it misreads texts, forgets anniversaries, says the wrong thing when you needed the right one. Flesh stumbles. Fantasy never does. In your imagination, love is neat. It's cinematic. It's someone who arrives at the right moment with the right depth and the right backstory. A character tailored to your wounds, who holds you like they've read the script of your trauma and know exactly what to do with it. You don't fall in love anymore, because you're already in love with a ghost, a shimmering echo of all the people you wished had stayed, wrapped in the aesthetics of your favorite books, set to the soundtrack of your best memories, perfectly engineered to disappoint you the moment they become real. And I get it. Reality has let you down. People have walked away. They've misunderstood you, used you, wanted the parts of you that were easy, and left when things got complicated. So now, you seek a kind of safety in perfection, in pre-screening every potential connection, disqualifying anyone who doesn't match the fantasy exactly. But slowly, this becomes a trap, because no one can measure up. Not really. You keep meeting people but comparing them to someone who doesn't exist. And then you wonder why nothing ever feels right. It's not because you're broken. It's because your standard of love has become metaphysical. Plato knew this fantasy well. In the symposium, he spoke of love as a ladder, one that begins with the beauty of a single body, but climbs toward the beauty of souls, then ideas, and finally, the form of beauty itself, pure, unchanging, perfect. But here's the mistake we make. We try to start at the top. We try to bypass the trembling hands, the awkward silences, the misaligned schedules, and unspoken fears. We want love that already understands us. Love that arrives finished. Love that doesn't need to grow. But growth is not the byproduct of love. It is love. Love begins exactly where fantasy ends, in the moment when the person in front of you doesn't match your script, and you choose to stay anyway. The greatest danger of fantasy is not that it sets your standards too high. It's that it keeps you alone. Not physically, maybe. You might be dating, hooking up, texting people who check the boxes. But emotionally, you're still orbiting your own projection. No one touches you. Because no one can. And so, you live in the in-between, where no one disappoints you. But no one moves you either, where you avoid heartbreak, but also miss the miracle of watching love become real in its imperfection. Here's the truth you already feel, but never say out loud. You don't want perfect. You want alive. You want friction, tension, challenge. You want the pleasure that comes after misunderstanding, the closeness that only blooms after two people survive each other's sharp edges. Fantasy doesn't give you that. Fantasy gives you a sculpture, still, beautiful, and cold to the touch. But love is warm. It moves. It stumbles. It contradicts itself and apologizes badly and shows up late and still chooses you in the most human way possible. That's what you want. That's what you used to believe in. But somewhere along the way, you traded the chaos of love for the clarity of illusion. And clarity feels good, but it doesn't hold you at night. It doesn't surprise you. It doesn't soften you. It doesn't bring you back to the version of yourself who still believed in the beauty of two unfinished people trying anyway. So now, the real question is this: will you keep polishing your fantasy? Or will you let it crack open and finally let something real walk in? So now what? You've seen through the fantasy. You've named the fear. You've felt the ache of absence, not just of a person, but of the part of you that used to love with both hands, without calculation, without armor. But how do you return to that softness without becoming naive again? How do you love again without repeating the same old story? It starts, not with the other, but with you. Because love is never just about who you choose. It's about how you show up to the choosing. If the old way was to fall, to slip into love like water down a slope, to be pulled, intoxicated, dissolved, then maybe the new way is to stand. To love not by losing yourself, but by offering yourself. This is where philosophy returns, not as a dry discipline, but as a compass for the soul. Take Kierkegaard, the Danish thinker who spoke of love not as romance or compatibility, but as commitment. Not obligation, but decision. A radical act of will. He wrote of the knight of faith, the one who walks through absurdity, disappointment, even despair, and still chooses love, not because it makes sense, but because it's the only thing worth doing. To love again is not to return to the teenager you once were. It's to become the adult who can carry both memory and mystery. Who can say, I know what it's like to be hurt. I know what it's like to lose myself. And I choose still to open the door. Because love, real love, requires presence over passion, clarity over obsession, witness over rescue. And presence is terrifying because it means you show up every day without guarantees. You say, I'm here, not because they complete you, but because you see them and you want to build something with them, stone by stone, day by day, in full view of your shared flaws. This kind of love is quiet, less cinematic, more embodied. It lives in small gestures, the way you listen, the way you breathe when they're angry, the way you don't run away when they say something hard. It doesn't scream, doesn't demand, doesn't stage grand scenes in the rain. It just stays. And when it leaves, if it must, it does so gently, without shattering the ground. To love again without going backwards is to accept that love will never be safe, but it can be sacred. And sacred doesn't mean perfect. It means chosen, seen, held. It means you stop asking love to fix you and start asking it to meet you halfway, with effort, with friction, with grace. And yes, you'll get it wrong. You'll slip into old habits. You'll want to test them, manipulate the moment, protect yourself with silence or sarcasm. But this time, you'll notice, you'll name it. You'll own your edge and soften it because you've done the work. You've gone inside. You've met the part of you that needed the fantasy. And now you're ready for the real thing. Not perfect, not painless, but real. And real is enough. If any part of this resonated with you, if you saw your past in these words or your future in these questions, you're not alone. We're all stumbling towards something real, something a little less shiny, a little more alive. Let's keep talking about it. In the comments, in your head, in the quiet moments between two heartbeats when you wonder if it's still possible to feel something true. And if you want to go further down this path with me, you can like, share, subscribe, all the usual rituals. But more than that, drop a thought, a doubt, a story. Let's turn this monologue into a real conversation. Because healing happens in dialogue, suddenly. Let's think together, not forever, but just long enough to build something real.